Our first item for tonight's auction is a Lord Rank Wyvern Mana Core. The host's voice rang out with clarity, every word precise, yet carrying a melodic charm that seemed to fill the hall. With a delicate snap of her fingers, the attendants moved forward, carrying a pure white core that radiated a faint, frosty mist. The chill that emanated from it seemed to settle over the crowd, brushing against their skin like the first touch of winter. The audience froze in awe. Those who had never attended a grand auction before could hardly believe what they were seeing. The items here were not mere treasures. Even the lowest-ranked objects were worth fortunes, things that most people could only dream of touching. Whispers ran through the crowd like a gentle breeze stirring excitement, but the moment the host raised her hand, silence fell like a heavy curtain. "The core belongs to a frost wyvern," she continued, her tone soft but authoritative, her eyes glinting with controlled brilliance. "A rare descendant of dragons. Though the chance is small, there is a less than 1% possibility of gaining a trace of draconic bloodline upon absorbing the core. The starting price is 50,000 gold coins, with increments no less than 5,000. As the words left her lips, the first bid erupted almost immediately. 55,000, 60,000, 65,000, 70,000. The rhythm of bidding quickened like a storm breaking loose. Voices rose, overlapping each other, carrying the feverish desperation of people gambling everything for even a sliver of power. The allure of a draconic bloodline was something few could resist, even knowing the risk that came with it. After all, dragons were prideful beings. If word spread that a human dared to steal even a trace of their lineage, the consequences could be fatal. Yet, greed has always been stronger than fear. Inside the treasure chamber, hidden high above, Ash crouched silently behind the massive pillar, his body shrouded by absolute concealment. The faint sound of the host's voice flowed into his ear through the earpiece, along with the rising chorus of frantic bids. But his focus wasn't on the auction. His sharp eyes were fixed below, on the workers who had entered earlier. Even before the host had announced the item, the core had arrived nearly 5 minutes prior. Ash watched it being swiftly transported and placed onto the enchanted platform and then taken away. Ash watched it all, but he made no moves. He just continued to observe. Meanwhile, back in the auction hall, the bidding war reached its peak. 100,000, 110, 120. Finally, after a few tense seconds of silence, a firm voice echoed from one of the upper VIP booths. 1 million. The room fell quiet. No one raised the bid further. Even the greedy ones understood that beyond this point, the risk outweighed the reward. The room fell still, the tension thick and palpable. Even the most eager bidders understood that no one would surpass this mark. The host's eyes glimmered with satisfaction as she called out, 1 million. Once, 1 million. Twice, 1 million. Thrice. The item is sold to VIP room 5. Congratulations to the bidder. Polite applause filled the hall, though most clapped half-heartedly, already waiting for the next treasure to appear. "And now," she continued, her voice rising slightly with anticipation, "let us move on to our next item, a rare skill book." Item after item was presented, each more valuable than the last. Weapons imbued with elemental enchantments, potions crafted from extinct herbs, and armor forged by long-dead masters. Each item sold for more than 100,000 gold coins, demonstrating the absolute value of the collection. Yet, none of these treasures captured Ash's interest. He knew the items he truly desired would appear in the second half of the auction, and until then, he would simply observe the treasure chamber. Each item teleported from the 5th layer to the treasure chamber, appearing with a soft burst of light. Ash tracked them all silently, his mind absorbing everything. Due to this, when the next item came out of the array, Ash narrowed his eyes. He saw it before the host announced it to the audience. "Alright, audience, you might be getting bored with all these normal items being displayed. Let us refresh our mood. Next is a batch of young elven girls who were enslaved some time ago. I hope you like them. The starting price is 400k for all 4, And the price is high because all four are pure, the host announced, her voice carrying a casual cruelty that chilled the hall. She clapped once, and immediately a large iron cage rolled into view, catching the light with a metallic sheen. Inside, the four elven girls huddled together, their delicate faces pale and frightened. Their long, once lustrous hair was now tangled and dusty, falling in strands over ragged clothes that barely covered their bodies. Small collars gleamed coldly against their necks, marking them as property. The audience leaned forward instinctively, drawn by a mix of curiosity and greed. Some faces reflected desire, others a grim fascination. But the girls themselves said nothing, holding tightly to each other for warmth and comfort, tears silently streaming down their cheeks. Ash teleported back to his VIP room 1 and observed the scene calmly. He had expected slaves in the black market, but never elves. Earlier, his investigations had only revealed human slaves, and he had avoided that area because of the heightened security. Now, he understood that the passage he had found, where the slaves were kept, was connected to the 5th layer of the black market. The girls looked no older than 17 or 18, and their vulnerability was painfully apparent. They trembled, their tiny bodies pressing together instinctively, while the audience's stares grew heated. Ash's mind, however, was already working, considering how their presence could be turned into leverage to achieve his goals. The bidding began almost immediately, sharp and relentless. 410,000, a voice called out. 430,000. Another bid followed quickly. 450,000. The numbers climbed steadily. 470,000. 500,000. 510,000. The bids rose like a storm, and Ash realized that the gold he carried in his soul space would not be enough. Then his gaze fell on the black metal card he had taken from Adam Hart, engraved in gold with his name. Most cards shut down when the owner died, but this one still worked and showed no traceable link to Adam's life. Ash frowned at the unusual card, then shrugged the worry aside with a grin. I doubt I am getting gold like this for free. I am not heaven's favorite. I know there might be risks if I use this card, but I do not care, he thought. Pride and calculation outweighed caution. Ash keyed the bid through the card, his voice calm but carrying across the hall with deliberate clarity. 1 million gold, he said. As soon as Ash spoke, his voice rolled across the entire auction hall, clear, calm, and commanding. Immediately, the chatter ceased, and every eye turned toward the VIP rooms. Of course, no one could see inside, only the dark, opaque glass that concealed the occupant. Yet there was something inexplicable in the hall, an almost magnetic pull in his tone that made every listener freeze. It was difficult to explain. He had only spoken normally, yet the sound carried a subtle authority, a charm that made people instinctively stop, drawn as if by an invisible thread, wanting to hear more. Even those who had been distracted by the glittering wealth and treasures of the auction found themselves caught off guard. The host blinked rapidly, startled by the sudden silence. For a brief moment, she realized she had lost focus entirely. Panic flashed across her face as she hurried to regain control. 1 million gold coins. Does anyone wish to bid higher? A pause stretched across the hall. No one. Still silence. All right then, 1 million once. 1 million twice. 1 million. 2 million. Came a sharp, confident voice from a distance. All eyes darted toward VIP room 13. Whispers spread through the audience, speculation running wild. Ash raised the bid again. 3.5 million, he said, followed immediately by 4 million. 4.5 million. 5 million. The bids escalated relentlessly, each one met with a counter without pause. Even Ash found himself momentarily lost in the rhythm, forgetting for a brief moment that he still had no idea how much money the card contained. Fortunately, the machine on his table, sleek and unassuming, displayed the status of the card automatically. Its function was simple yet crucial. If a bid exceeded the available funds, it would beep loudly, nullifying the attempt and exposing any false bidders. It was a basic rule designed to prevent cheating or disruption, ensuring the auction proceeded smoothly without manipulation from outside parties. Ash continued steadily, raising the stakes, each increment more audacious than the last. The numbers climbed to an almost obscene 22 million gold coins. It was a sum that would make even the wealthiest drool. Yet the card remained undiminished, its mysterious power silently confirming the funds. He allowed himself a slow glance at the card before turning his gaze back toward the host. With the opposing bidder finally silenced, yielding for reasons unknown and irrelevant to Ash. Ash did not concern himself with the reasons. It did not matter. 22 million going once, twice, and thrice. Congratulations, VIP of room 1. The host announced, her voice steady and formal. A collective exhale rippled through the crowd. People had been holding their breath, watching the clash between two moneyed titans unfold. Whispers spread like wildfire, and astonished murmurs filled the air. Before the excitement could swell any further, a sharp, decisive clap rang out, commanding silence and attention. All right then, let us move on to the next item. Meanwhile, in VIP room 13, Max was boiling with anger. He had already noticed the number on Ash's token, and with the sharp vision of a master. From the moment the auction started, Max had planned to confront him, to make sure Ash knew he could not simply steal the spotlight, and now that moment had arrived. The room held 4 people, Max, Emily, and their fathers, the leaders of the Black Serpents and the Crimson Vultures. When the bidding for the elven slaves started, many lustful people were interested in purchasing them, but Max held out as he did not want to make a bad impression of himself in front of Emily. But when he saw the boy whose handsomeness overshadowed his, he bid on them. Max instantly decided to bid on the girls. He even voiced out his intention to make the 4 girls maids of Emily, which she had no problem with. Thus, the tug-of-war between both Ash and Max started. Price continued to increase till it reached the staggering amount of 22 million. Max had wanted to push the bidding even higher, to crush Ash's presence with sheer wealth, but his father's hand on his arm stopped him. Both fathers had already agreed to combine their funds for the grand prize at the end, and Max had no choice but to restrain himself. He ground his teeth, biting his lip until a thin line of blood appeared, his gaze never leaving room 1. Every second that passed, Max's anger and frustration coiled tighter inside him. Ash's calm composure, the effortless way he drew attention without even trying. It was maddening. He felt jealous. I don't know who you are, but I will make you regret crossing paths with me, he thought, the words silent yet burning in his mind, a promise of revenge. Emily, sitting beside him, could not look away. Her eyes kept drifting toward room 1. Her thoughts tangled between curiosity and awe. The voice she had just heard, soft yet commanding, had left a lingering impression, a melody that seemed to pull at her attention with invisible strings. Even hidden behind the VIP barrier, even without seeing the person fully, the presence felt almost tangible. She leaned slightly forward, as if her body wanted to move closer, to witness more, while Max's anger beside her made the contrast sharper, more suffocating. Max's fists clenched tighter on the table, white-knuckled, the veins in his neck standing out as he tried to hold back a roar of frustration. Every glance toward room 1 was a reminder that he had been bested in influence, at least for the moment, and it stung. Yet, he knew this was only the beginning. The real game, the truly valuable item, had not even appeared. For now, all he could do was watch, seethe, and wait, while his pride flared hotter with every second. Both fathers remained calm, watching silently. Their eyes flicked between the auction hall and their children. Even as Max struggled to contain himself and Emily remained captivated. Both leaders of different criminal organizations looked at each other and smiled. Sir, here are your slaves. The attendant's voice was soft but firm as Ash stood in front of the cage holding the 4 elves. Their eyes were wide with fear, trembling uncontrollably as they stared at him. Every movement they made seemed fragile, like they could shatter at any moment. Ash remembered that when he had first seen them in the treasure chamber, they were blindfolded. Otherwise, he would have liked to ask them questions regarding where they came from, who they were, and why they were here, but for now he remained silent. He stepped closer and tossed a single gold coin toward the elf at the front with little bit of force. The coin spun in the air with speed, but before it could pass above their heads, the elf at the front caught it with inhuman reflex. That reaction was instinctive, sharp, and fast, making Ash raise an eyebrow slightly. A small, cold smile appeared on his lips as he spoke in a low, commanding voice. "Do not lose that coin. Otherwise, I will kill all of you, or sell you somewhere far worse than this." The warning made the girls shiver even more. Tears ran down their faces, and quiet sobs escaped their lips. They huddled together, seeking warmth and comfort from each other, holding on tightly as if their small bodies could shield them from the danger around them. Ash then turned to the attendant, his voice calm but firm. "Can you keep these 4 slaves for 2 or 3 days? I will come later to fetch them. I have important tasks after the auction and cannot take them with me right now." The attendant hesitated, unsure how to respond, but Ash added, "I will pay extra because of my request. Just make sure they are safe, and treat them as you usually would." "Yes, sir. Certainly. But I will need to ask my superior," the attendant said, his voice nervous. He quickly left, leaving Ash alone with the cage. The air was thick with fear, and the metallic scent of the bars mixed with the nervous energy of the girls. Minutes passed slowly, the trembling and soft whimpers filling the quiet space. When the attendant returned, bringing confirmation that it was allowed, Ash allowed himself a faint smile. Back in VIP Room 1, he instructed the lady outside not to disturb him until he won any bid again. After closing the door, he changed clothes quietly and vanished. He appeared again in his hidden place in the treasure chamber, crouched in the shadowed corner of the pillar. He waited patiently. Time passed, and one rare item after another was sold. Each piece was a treasure so valuable that most people would risk their lives just to touch it. Yet none of it caught Ash's interest. He could have bought something for others if he wanted, but he had no friends to gift to, and he had found nothing suitable for Alicia. So he remained quiet, observing everything with careful attention. Half of the auction had ended, and a 15-minute break began. That was when something appeared in the treasure chamber that made Ash smile quietly to himself. "Looks like my gamble worked out." The same cage with the 4 elves was being teleported back to where they had come from. Ash was certain that the place was the 5th layer of the black market. He had given the gold coin to the elf girl on purpose. That coin was his anchor, the key he would use to enter the hidden layer safely. At first, Ash had planned to use the runic array himself, as he had already decoded it and could enter without trouble. But he chose not to. This method carried some risks, so if there was a safe way, why go through the hard one? Ash knew, if he stepped inside the 5th layer, no one could stop him from moving freely and stealing whatever he wanted. With a quiet smile, Ash returned to VIP Room 1. Securing a way into the 5th layer had lifted a heavy weight from his mind. Now he only needed patience and timing, and nothing else could disturb him. With the extra time, his thoughts drifted toward something he had been neglecting. "I can't believe a legendary material showed up here, and it wasn't even mentioned in the novel. Who could have missed this?" He thought about the story's author and their poor planning, but he did not blame them too harshly. It was also possible that his presence in this world had caused these deviations. Either way, the material existed, and that was all that mattered. If he could obtain it, his stubbornly stagnant stats might finally rise. Still, he would need to improve his alchemy to fully unlock the item's power and extract its true potential. Getting the item would not be easy. The black card in his possession might cover the cost, but Ash had no way of knowing exactly how much money it contained. It was a strange and fortunate situation that the card still worked despite its owner being dead. This uncertainty only made his plan bolder. He intended to use the 5th layer as a secret path, slip past all protections, and take everything the black market had hidden. His goal was to leave nothing behind. The plan was ambitious and dangerous, but not impossible. All that remained now was patience. Ash leaned back slightly, his mind sharp and alert, waiting for the moment when he could act. Time would reveal whether his plan succeeded or if it would meet failure. Soon, the second phase of the auction began. Ash sat back in his seat, his eyes glancing at the stage below, yet his thoughts were elsewhere. He could feel the restlessness in his chest, a strange thrill that he could no longer suppress. His fingers tapped lightly on the table, his lips curving slightly, as if trying to hide the growing excitement that refused to fade. He didn't know when it started, but somewhere along the way, he had begun to enjoy stealing the treasures these powerful organizations guarded so tightly. The very idea of taking what they believed was untouchable filled him with an odd sense of satisfaction. It wasn't about greed or hatred, but something deeper. A strange rush that came from knowing he could walk in unseen, take everything, and vanish without leaving a trace. The danger only made it more exhilarating. Even so, Ash still had his own principles. He never took from the innocent or weak, only from those who built their organization through lies and blood. That was the one line he would never cross. Though he already crossed it once in the Dragon Continent, he still has regret about it. The auction continued as rare items were brought out one after another. But none of them caught Ash's interest. He waited patiently, but boredom slowly crept in as the host's voice echoed again and again, announcing bids that climbed into millions. For him, these treasures were nothing more than scraps. He can't use skill books, and the treasures that were presented will not help him in any way. After nearly 15 minutes, he finally decided it was time to move. With a calm expression, Ash summoned the last bottle of invisibility potion. He had used most of them earlier, keeping this one aside only for emergencies. He uncorked the bottle and drank it in one smooth motion. The potion slid down his throat with a cooling sensation, spreading through his veins like mist. Slowly, his body began to blur, fading from sight until not even his shadow remained. A faint smile touched his lips as he looked at the empty space where his hands used to be. Without wasting another second, Ash teleported away from his seat, disappearing from the VIP room like he was never there at all. The Black Market was a node organization, each branch overseeing the area assigned to them and reporting everything to the upper authority. It was also one of the few organizations that did not support racism. Inside the Black Market, people of all races worked together. Elves, dwarves, and humans could be seen working in the same place without conflict. After all, humans could not possibly operate freely in other races' continents. While the human continent was divided into many cities, each city was overseen by a particular city head. Similarly, the Black Market in the human continent also had its own branch in every major city, all connected under one structure. The same system worked in the land of Forge, though the Elven continent was different. Their entire race lived around the World Tree, their most sacred place. There were no other cities or smaller towns, only one grand city built around the tree itself. That was why the Elven continent had only one main Black Market base. The neutral continent also had just one, as there were no proper cities or settlements there to blend into. The Black Market base in those lands remained hidden and rarely made contact with others. Everything had been going smoothly for both the Elven and Dwarven representatives of the Black Market. Goods were moving in and out of their continents without issue. Trade was steady, profits were high, and there were no signs of trouble. But suddenly, everything changed. Without warning, all the agents working in the Elven lands stopped answering their superiors' calls. Messages were ignored, communication lines went silent, and soon there was no way to reach anyone in the Elven continent at all. The same thing happened with the dwarves. One by one, all connections disappeared, and even the hidden tunnels and passages that only the Black Market knew about were sealed off without a trace. It caused a wave of frustration within the organization. Those who worked for the Black Market were often people with no loyalty, criminals, mercenaries, and outcasts who would not hesitate to sell their own race for profit. None of them dared to enter the Elven or Dwarven territories to investigate what had happened. Because of that, the entire Black Market network suffered. The supply of rare materials and precious goods was suddenly cut in half. Their profits dropped heavily, and for a group that moved wealth across continents, this was not a small loss. Fortunately, nothing had happened in the human and neutral continents. Those two still remained active, giving them at least some source of income. I feel like my head will just burst apart. Arthur frowned as he rubbed his forehead. In front of him, the desk was filled with piles of papers, reports, trade summaries, and ledgers filled with lost figures. Every new page only deepened the crease between his brows. The numbers were not kind. Even though the black market had enough reserves to operate without trade for at least 5 years, it was going to become a problem in the long run. For an organization this massive, even surviving 1 year without resources was enough to show just how much money and influence they truly held. Sigh. I don't know what I will even report to the high seat. The high seat was the head of the entire black market, the one who oversaw everything from the shadows. His word was absolute and no one dared to question it. Arthur held a special position, as he was the one who reported directly to the high seat. The other regional heads, spread across continents, all reported to him. As he went through the reports from the Elven and Dwarven continents, his headache only grew worse. He had already expected that things would get difficult, but this level of silence and loss was far beyond what he had imagined. Just then, a soft knock broke through his thoughts. "Come in," he said, not looking up. The door opened, and an agent entered the room, his steps hurried and uneasy. "What happened?" Arthur asked, his tone calm, but the frown on his face deepened slightly. "Sir, the young lord has run away again, without any guards or security." The agent's voice trembled as he spoke. His hands were clenched tightly at his sides, sweat dripping down the back of his neck. "If something happens to the young lord—" He didn't even dare to complete the thought. Arthur slowly looked up, his sharp eyes locking onto the nervous man in front of him. His gaze was cold. "And what are you doing here, instead of finding that troublesome brat?" The air in the room turned heavy. The agent's breathing quickened as the pressure settled over him. His heart pounded so hard that he could hear it in his ears. "Yes, sir. We found out that the young lord is attending the grand auction. We've already sent people to bring him back. I just came to report to you about this." The tension in the air faded, replaced by calm. Arthur leaned back slightly and said in a steady voice, "I see. If he's at the auction, then there's nothing to worry about. Just make sure he returns safely." "Yes, sir." The agent bowed and hurried out of the room, his steps almost stumbling in relief. Arthur watched him leave, his eyes thoughtful. The auction, huh? Did something there catch his interest? He sighed quietly. "Well, I'll know soon enough when he returns." What he didn't know was that his son would never return. And as for the storm that would rise after his death, only time would tell. Ash appeared inside a dark cage, the air thick with fear and tension that seemed to cling to every surface. The faint sound of chains scraping against metal echoed softly in the stillness, mixing with the shallow breaths of those trapped within. His gaze shifted toward the 4 elves huddled near the walls, their hands and legs bound by heavy shackles. He stood there silently for a few seconds, observing them. His presence was completely erased, not even the faintest ripple of energy escaping his body. Absolute concealment had hidden every trace of heat and life within him, while the invisibility potion masked him from the naked eye. The potion's duration was short, lasting only 15 seconds, but that was enough. Now that he knew there was not much security around him, he could just come and go as he pleased. As his eyes lingered on the elves, a memory surfaced. Serena's face, the elf queen, flashed through his mind, her calm and proud expression. He sighed softly, realizing he couldn't just ignore these elves. Although he spoke with coldness earlier with them and threatened to kill the elf if she lost the coin, it was just an act. They were prisoners, stripped of dignity, and destined to be sold like objects. Even if it wasn't part of his plan, he decided to at least change that fate for them. Ash stepped closer to them and reached out and gently touched the shoulder of the elf to whom he had given his anchor. The moment his fingers brushed her skin, she jolted up in fright, instinctively about to scream. But before she could make a sound, Ash placed his hand firmly over her lips. "Be silent if you want to leave this place," he whispered, his voice soft, but it had a strange calming effect, which made them instinctively listen to him. All 4 elves froze at once. Even though he spoke only to one of them, the others heard his words clearly. Fear spread through their hearts, but beneath it was a faint flicker of hope and relief. Ignoring their trembling, Ash continued in the same low voice, "I will be taking all of you back to your continent, so don't make any sound. And wear these." He reached into his soul vault and took out 4 black eye patches, placing them on the ground in front of them. Since he was still invisible, the eye patches seemed to appear from nowhere, making the elves stiffen in shock. For a moment, none of them moved, but after exchanging uncertain glances, they slowly picked up the eye patches. Even if they were unsure about this unseen figure, something about his voice felt familiar and strangely reassuring. They remembered hearing it before, the same voice of the person who bought them in the auction. They didn't understand how he had appeared inside this cage, but they decided to trust him. Ash waited patiently as they fastened the eye patches over their eyes. Then he spoke again, his tone calm but firm. "Remember, no matter what happens, don't open your eyes or remove the eye patch. I'll say it again. Don't take it off, or you might not reach your home. Do you understand?" All 4 elves nodded quickly, their faces pale, their breaths uneven. Ash's lips curved slightly as he watched them nodding like frightened ducks. He found it almost amusing, though he knew their fear was natural. Still, he needed them to obey completely. He didn't want them to see what was inside his soul vault, not even by accident. Yes, he was going to store them inside his soul vault and then teleport directly to the Elven continent before returning here. If not for the large time difference within his soul, he might have let them stay there for a few minutes to recover. But knowing how distorted the flow of time was inside that space, even a few minutes might become days for them. He transported them instantly and then teleported straight to the World Tree's location. As soon as Ash appeared in the office of Serena, he brought out the 4 elves. Everything happened so fast that the elves didn't even have the chance to understand what had just occurred. They only felt the world spinning and twisting around them again and again before it finally stopped. Confusion lingered in their eyes, as if their minds were still trying to catch up with their bodies. "Looks like she is not here," Ash thought as his eyes moved toward the empty seat of Serena. But before another thought could form, a green portal bloomed in front of him like a ripple in the air, and from it, the World Tree's avatar stepped out in her human form. Her presence filled the room with a faint fragrance of nature, calm yet ancient. "It's a pleasant surprise to see you here," she said softly, her tone graceful but heavy with meaning. "It seems you came to return my children who were sold to slave traders." Her voice changed slightly at the end, becoming cold and sharp like frost spreading across glass, making the atmosphere tense for a moment. "Yup," Ash said, tilting his head with a sly grin. "I found them being sold, so I brought them here. There might still be more of them out there, but I can't come back every time. My mana is already running low, and if I take too long, another elf might end up being sold. If only I had some artifact that could hold living beings, things would be so much easier." He exaggerated a heavy sigh, letting his shoulders slump as if the weight of the world rested on him. Then he leaned just slightly closer, his voice dropping to a teasing, almost mischievous tone. "It's such a tragedy, really. I mean, I wish I could handle it all myself, but maybe someone could step in and help me a little? Otherwise, who will save them?" The World Tree's lips twitched slightly. Her hands even trembled for a moment, as if she had to resist the urge to smack the shameless boy standing before her. She clearly understood what he was implying. He wanted her to give him something that could solve his mana problem or allow him to store living beings safely. She wanted to scold him, but she held herself back. In truth, after her long slumber, she had learned the bitter truth that many of her own people had betrayed their kind, selling elves to traders for wealth. Those traders were already punished, their roots cut off from the World Tree's grace forever. But she still couldn't save those who had already been sold. If Ash could truly help her bring them back, perhaps his shamelessness could be overlooked for now. With a calm gesture, she raised her hand. A small leaf formed in the air, glowing softly with green light, and drifted toward him. "If you place this leaf on the ground," she said, her tone returning to its usual calmness, "it will open a portal that connects directly to me. You can send my children through it, and the mana will be drawn from me instead of you." Hearing her explanation, Ash smiled with satisfaction. "Thank you. I'll send everyone I find back to you." In the next moment, he vanished without another word, leaving behind a faint shimmer of spatial energy. The World Tree avatar stood silently for a while before letting out a soft sigh, her expression a mix of helplessness and reluctant amusement. Then her gaze shifted to the 4 elf girls, who were still trembling slightly with their eyes covered by the black eye patches. They looked lost, afraid to even move. The World Tree's expression softened as she slowly walked toward them, her presence gentle like a soothing breeze after a storm. As soon as Ash appeared inside the dark cage again, he wasted no time. His mind was already running 100 steps ahead, planning to borrow some treasures from the black market before they could even be auctioned. He sent out his mental energy, scanning the area carefully, and was relieved to find no guards nearby. The air was thick with the hum of magic and tension, and hundreds of slaves were scattered throughout the zone, each one trapped in a cage or chained to the walls. Ash's detection told him there might even be thousands, spread across the immense space that stretched farther than he had expected. He moved cautiously, keeping to the shadows, noting the mix of races among the slaves. There were elves, dwarves, humans, and even some strange beasts, each one exhausted, fearful, and caged. There were also some demons caged here, which he certainly did not expect to see. For now, he resisted the urge to free them all except the demons, because a single wrong move could trigger alarms or alert the patrolling drones. The 5th layer was unlike anything he had seen before. The cages were stacked 20 to 30 high, arranged in long, seemingly endless rows. Each row repeated with mechanical precision, creating a labyrinth of misery and metal. From his perch at the top of one row, Ash finally saw the zone of slaves end, giving way to a massive bunker that stretched as far as his eyes could see. It looked more like a super-advanced warehouse than a treasury. Shelves climbed toward the ceiling, crammed with transparent boxes, each one filled with goods and treasures so numerous that counting them felt impossible. He activated Omni-Thought, allowing his mind to think in multiple directions at once, calculating the safest and fastest way to move through the zone and collect the treasures he had targeted. Within a minute, a confident, almost mischievous smile appeared on his face. "Let's do this. It has the best chance of success without getting caught." With fluid, silent movements, he began slipping through the aisles, his senses alert to every sound and shadow. What Ash did not realize was that a large squad was already heading toward the Grand Auction House, tasked with retrieving their young master Adam, the very man Ash had killed to gain entry to the auction, as well as the 4th layer. The timing was precarious, and the collision of their plans was inevitable. Ash's plan had been daring from the start. He had first considered finding an artifact that could let him merge with shadows and vanish completely, blending into darkness like a ghost. But the thought of searching for something so rare in a place as vast and heavily guarded as the black market made him abandon the idea. It would take too long and risk exposing him before he could even start. Instead, he conceived an even bolder approach. If he could pull it off, he might be able to clear the entire warehouse without anyone noticing. The task was daring and dangerous, yet thrilling. He needed to know the place inside and out before making any move. For the next 15 minutes, Ash moved swiftly and silently through the massive warehouse, mentally scanning every corner. Thanks to his eidetic memory, he could recall the complex layout perfectly, storing each passage, cage, and vault in his mind as if he had drawn a map there himself. The drones that patrolled overhead and the scattered guards made the task trickier, but he avoided them carefully, slipping through shadows and using every angle of cover to remain unseen. Eventually, he located the teleportation array where goods were moved from the warehouse to the treasure chamber on the 4th floor. Beyond the cages and storage areas, he spotted countless sealed vaults. Their sheer number and size suggested treasures that required even more protection, and he knew he would need Snow's help if he wanted to lure enter them. Snow was already in the deep sea, wandering across the vast, unknown waters in search of the Mermaid Kingdom. In truth, the mermaids were not natives of this world, and no one had known of their existence until much later. When the world of Ecumia was on the brink of destruction in the novel, these races were forced to surface on land. The people of Ecumia finally realized that there were more races other than what they knew. The mermaids were not alone in this. Alongside them, the Nagas and the Sirens had also crossed over from their original world. According to their testimonies recorded in the novel, all three races had come from a world where the oceans had become uninhabitable. When their home began to die, a sudden portal appeared before them, offering a way to survival. They passed through this gate and entered Ecumia, bringing their civilizations with them. In their old world, these races had been enemies, constantly fighting one another, but the destruction of their home forced them into a temporary peace. They agreed to coexist, setting aside old rivalries to establish new lives in this strange, unfamiliar world. Upon arriving in Ecumia, each race founded its own kingdom beneath the waves. The mermaids, Sirens, and Nagas all carved out spaces for themselves, building communities and adapting to the new ocean while maintaining a cautious distance from one another. Peace prevailed for a time, and they were able to rebuild, but the appearance of dungeon gates in the ocean brought continuous threats. Monsters and other dangers emerged from these portals, forcing the three kingdoms to remain vigilant at all times. Despite these challenges, the deep-sea races were not powerless. Each kingdom had sacred artifacts that protected them and maintained a balance among their people. Through careful coordination, the mermaids, Sirens, and Nagas created a fragile but effective balance that allowed them to defend their territories and protect their citizens. Snow's current mission was to locate the sacred artifact of the mermaids, because the last rune on this planet had merged with it. If Ash wanted the rune, he first needed to find their kingdom, which was no simple task. The ocean was vast, covering more than half of their world, and the waters were filled with countless unattended dungeon gates and dangerous monsters lurking in every shadow. Navigating this chaos to find the hidden kingdoms was nearly impossible for anyone. Only Snow could accomplish it without causing a bloodbath. Her unique abilities, combined with the power of runes, allowed her to move through the deep sea with precision and efficiency. With her abilities, even the most treacherous areas became manageable, and her task of locating the Mermaid Kingdom and their sacred artifact was made far more achievable than it would have been for anyone else. And it would also allow her to grow stronger. But, for now, his priority was clear. He needed Snow's assistance. She had gained some new abilities that would make handling the vaults and treasures far easier, and without her, his plan might fail before it even began. "Mama, I missed you too, Snow." Ash gazed at the white snake curled around his neck, her body gleaming softly in the dim light. She let out a gentle hiss, brushing her face against his cheek as if kissing him with affection. Ash could clearly feel the happiness that overflowed from her heart after meeting him again. Through their soul connection, he could feel her emotions loud and clear, each one flowing into him like a warm current of energy. There were no words that needed to be exchanged between them, because their hearts already understood each other perfectly. There were many other things he could sense as well, and one of them was how strong Snow currently was, but Ash had no idea just how much she had grown. When he looked at her status window, it showed no visible change. It was the same as before, as if nothing had happened. But Ash knew it was not true. Even he did not know what kind of rules governed the strange status window that displayed the information of everything to the people of the world. He didn't know where it came from or how it worked. He had never even questioned why he could see it at all. When he first transmigrated into this world, he simply accepted it as something normal, something that everyone had, and continued with his life as if it were nothing unusual. Yet deep down, he knew that nothing in existence ever appeared without a reason. Every person in the universe has their own role to play, no matter how big or small. Whether their contribution changed the world or went completely unnoticed, everything existed for a purpose. Every single thing had a part to play in the great web of fate. Maybe today's small push given to a tiny snowball could result in an avalanche somewhere in the distant future. That meant every being was bound by fate, tied to fulfill their role, whether it was as a hero, a villain, a piece of cannon fodder, or an unnoticed extra. Of course, Ash was an anomaly through and through, for he had already defied his fate and even changed the fates of countless others beyond recognition. If fate itself could take form and manifest in the mortal world, Ash was sure it would have already sliced him into tiny pieces for breaking its order. But that was not possible, at least not for now. Knowing this, Ash believed that the status window was a part of the universe itself. Therefore, if something unknown appeared for the first time in existence, the universe would not know what it was. It had to study it, observe it, and then gradually define it. For example, there was the description of Ash's primordial core. Description: a mysterious core with no recorded data. It is the first of its kind, and its properties, abilities, and potential remain entirely unknown. No further analysis can be performed. Seeing how the description was written, Ash believed that the primordial core had never existed before. It was the first of its kind. As time passed, he assumed the universe was continuously analyzing it and slowly updating the information shown to him. If he looked at it from that perspective, then his soul-bonded companion, the primordial serpent Snow, was also something that had never existed before. It was highly possible that, because of this, the information displayed in her status window was incomplete or still developing. Ash already had his suspicions, after all. There were many abilities Snow could perform that were not listed in her status window. But he no longer cared about that. He knew Snow would always tell him about her abilities herself, so he didn't even bother opening the window anymore. He already knew about the new abilities she possessed and had also realized that even though she hadn't broken past her current rank of hatchling, rank F, she was clearly much stronger than before. Ash could feel it deeply in his soul connection with her. Although he didn't know how to explain exactly how strong Snow had become, it didn't matter. He didn't need her to fight. Looking at Snow coiled around his neck, Ash felt a little conflicted. There was a nagging question in the back of his mind, which he couldn't seem to let out of his head. He summoned Snow because he needed her, but he had left Alicia all alone in the human continent. If he wanted, he could have left Snow for her protection, but he did not do that. Sush! I am again thinking all these negative things. Ash knew that although he was an anomaly, bending fate. But was fate simply a stick that could easily be bent? Could he truly manipulate the threads of destiny at will? No. And it was the truth. What Ash was doing might look like a miracle to many, but Ash did not have any power to bend fate to his whim. He was just using his knowledge of the future to become stronger, which changed the fate of a certain hero and, in return, slightly disturbed the web of fate. Through this, it was clear that Ray Dawson was someone important in the grand scheme of things, and it also implied that fate had many plans for him which were slowly being sabotaged by him. Ash was even glad that he did not try to kill the Golden Boy. After all, who knew what might have happened if he had tried for real? Some type of deus ex machina might have saved Ray's life, leaving Ash frustrated and miserable instead. He had not thought about this seriously before, but he and the Whisperer had talked about fate, and learning a little from him opened Ash's eyes. Ash knew that if someday fate decided to target him, there was only one weakness he had, and that was Alicia. If someone expected him to cage Alicia and stand guard 24/7 so nothing could harm her, it was impossible. He couldn't always be with her, and he couldn't just stop getting stronger because there was a threat to her life. He needed to get stronger so that he could end this game once and for all, which would allow him and Alicia to live peacefully, free from constant danger. But for that, he needed to get stronger, and for that, he needed to collect the runes, which were now the sources through which he could rank up. Ranking up from novice to grandmaster rank was quite simple, to be honest. There were no loud gestures or trials that demanded suffering or spectacle. Just the mana from the surroundings would flow into the body, purging impurities from the core and flesh, making the body stronger. After ranking up, one needed to let their base consolidate for some time before they could rank up again. Only after the Grandmaster rank did ranking up become a little dramatic. Ash's path was tied to runes. He needed them to become powerful and rank up as well. But he couldn't collect runes while staying by Alicia's side. He needed to leave her so that she could become powerful, so that she could become his strength, not his weakness. Though for that to happen, they both were missing quite a crucial thing. Time. They both didn't have time, so he felt no guilt that he called Snow to help him with something, while not leaving Snow for Alicia's protection. Huff! I need to calm down and think only positive things. Calming his rising emotions and restless thoughts, Ash looked toward Snow, who was gently rubbing her small head against his cheek. The warmth of her scales and the soft, rhythmic pressure of her movements grounded him, slowly easing the tension in his mind. He was crouching in the shadows, eyes fixed on one of the vaults, which was heavily guarded and protected. Clearly, the security here was even tighter than on the Dragon continent. But the dragons were arrogant, confident that no one could ever reach their floating island or enter their treasury. Their pride was predictable, almost expected. After all, practically no one could enter the place without alerting the dragons. Even Ash had been detected the last time, despite possessing the runes. "Can you enter inside and scout for me?" Ash asked Snow, coiled around his neck. She hissed softly in response and nodded before slithering down his arm, vanishing from sight. She merged seamlessly with the surroundings using concealment and sank into the ground. Snow had recently gained this ability during her travels across the sea, which allowed her to move unseen through the earth. Ash waited patiently for her report. In reality, he didn't even need to wait. After all, he could see what she was seeing. She shared her vision with him in real time, allowing him to witness every detail she observed beneath the surface. After traveling through the ground for a few minutes, Snow finally surfaced in the surroundings. The scene she revealed was enough to make Ash want to leap in joy, but he forced himself to remain composed, controlling the surge of excitement before it could overwhelm him. Even through the restraint, a flicker of anticipation and satisfaction danced in his eyes, reflecting both the success of Snow's scouting and the treasures he was seeing right now. Greed. People think greed means wanting money or power, but it's not that simple. Sometimes, it's wanting to be better than who you were yesterday. Wanting proof that you've made it, that you're not the same useless version of yourself everyone once ignored. Start small. Maybe you just want a little more respect, a little more control over your life. Then one day it's not enough. You need more wins, more praise, more something to fill that quiet space inside that still whispers you're not enough yet. Greed isn't a monster you notice growing. It hides inside every goal, every victory, pretending to be motivation. You tell yourself you deserve it, that you've earned this hunger. And maybe you have. But eventually, you stop chasing dreams and start chasing the feeling of chasing itself. That's what greed really is. Not the want for more, but the fear of stopping. Because once you stop, you have to face what's left of you when there's nothing left to want. And right now, Ash was feeling greedy. After getting drunk on the feeling of stealing things, Ash was slowly getting astray. The thrill of each successful theft had started twisting into something darker, something that made his heartbeat quicken even when he stood still. The sight in front of him was enough to make anyone drool. Through Snow's vision, Ash saw piles of gold coins as big as small mountains stacked inside a vault that glittered under the faint glow of the crystals embedded in its walls. The golden light danced softly across the room, reflecting off weapons, jewels, and artifacts that looked priceless even at a glance. And this was only a single vault of the black market. There were many others like this, too, each one holding unimaginable wealth that could buy entire cities or topple small kingdoms. I don't think there will be anyone who will say no to free money, but Ash did not make his move. The auction was still going on somewhere above, and he could hear the faint echoes of bids and cheers through his earpiece. Every passing moment reminded him that time was running short. He had to make haste if he wanted to finish before someone noticed something strange. Just like how Ash peeked inside the vault using Snow, he made sure to do the same with the others, too. There were 20 vaults in total, each one secured and reinforced, but to Snow it was nothing. The underground offered no resistance to her ghostly ability, letting her move like water through the earth. The entire process took around 10 minutes, her movements silent and precise, revealing everything hidden in the vaults. After Ash got the gist of everything that was present on the 5th layer, he took a deep breath. The thing he was going to do next was going to cause a commotion, one loud enough to make every guard in the black market rush toward him. His crazy stunt would put him right in the center of attention and mark him as an enemy of the black market. but he still decided to do it. Even though he did not have enough time to carefully inspect what each vault or warehouse held, he already had high expectations for what was stored there. The very thought of it made his blood burn with anticipation. Appearing back in the section where the slaves were kept, Ash gently patted the small head of Snow. Her scales were hard and cool to the touch, but still had a small softness. "Thank you, I don't think I could do this without you." Snow tilted her head slightly and licked his cheek, her tongue warm against his skin. It was a small gesture, but it felt like she was kissing him. After that, Snow vanished. She went back to her task deep in the sea. The space around Ash felt heavier after her departure, filled with the distant noise of the auction and the weight of what he was about to unleash. As soon as Snow vanished, Ash closed his eyes and appeared inside his soul vault. His physical body could not enter inside, so it was like an avatar or a soul projection, something that existed only within his soul. Appearing inside his vault, which can continuously grow in size as more and more items are placed here, Ash quietly observes the vast space around him. There was a vast difference between when Ash first entered here and now. The space was large, much larger than before. And the space here was not the only thing that had changed. In fact, if Ash wanted, he could now call out a compiled report of every single item present inside his vault, along with its image and short description. Because of that, Ash did not even bother to check what was inside the vaults of the black market one by one. He knew that once he transferred everything, he could go through the detailed report here without wasting time or energy. He also discovered that he could create different compartments for different types of things. Each compartment could be surrounded by walls that separated them neatly, like sections in a library. These features were already a part of his soul vault, but he had only recently realized how to use them properly. Not everything was mentioned in the status window. Ash had noticed long ago that when it came to runes, even the status window seemed to lack complete information. It was as if runes belonged to a higher system, something beyond what the world itself could measure. After a few minutes of work, Ash was standing inside a small room that he had just created. The room was completely empty, without a single door or opening. It looked like a black cage made of faintly glowing runic walls that shimmered with light. There was no furniture, no decoration, only silence and the soft hum of the runes. He had made this new compartment just moments ago. The space inside it would automatically expand as he stored more things within, so he was not too worried about the size. I hope it succeeds. What Ash was about to do was something that, in theory, sounded possible. It made sense logically, too, but there was no proof that it could actually work. He didn't even know if something like this was supposed to exist inside someone's soul. There was also a risk of receiving backlash and injuring his soul permanently, but even then, he wanted to try. He would rather try and regret later than live with regret for never trying at all. Taking a deep breath, he calmed his racing thoughts and summoned the leaf that the world tree had given him. He held it gently in his palm for a moment, feeling the faint energy pulsing within, then placed it on the floor in front of him. Yes, what Ash was trying to do was to open a portal inside his soul vault. A teleportation portal inside a soul. It sounded insane if one truly thought about it. Could something like that even exist? Could space itself bend within the soul's boundaries? But still, no one had ever tried such a thing before, so there was no definite answer. Or maybe someone did try, and their soul shattered as a result. Even knowing the risks, Ash chose to proceed. It was not because he wanted to save the slaves, but because he wanted to confirm if something like this was truly possible. Because if it was, then this ability could become something far more important later on, something that could change how he traveled, fought, and survived. As soon as the leaf touched the floor, nothing happened. The runes around him remained still and silent. Does it not work this way? Do I have to say some sort of incantation or something? Open. The moment the word left his lips, the entire room began to tremble. On the Elven continent. After giving Ash the leaf that was meant for creating a teleportation portal, she took the 4 elves he had brought with him and began healing their minds. The deep scars left on their psyche, all the trauma and fear they had developed during their time in the slave markets, started to fade away little by little. Not much time had passed after she had finished tending to them when she suddenly felt something. The faint thread of her connection to the leaf stirred, and in the next instant, she felt Ash using it. But the moment that realization hit her, her body shuddered. What? It was not her avatar that trembled, but the true world tree itself. A deep, ancient tremor rippled through its trunk and roots, causing a minor earthquake that spread through the continent before quickly subsiding. Every elven saint instantly sensed it and rushed toward her sacred grove. Even Serena was among them, her mana flaring with urgency. But the world tree ignored them all for the moment. Her expression darkened slightly as she muttered under her breath. What in the hell is that brat doing? Why is it consuming so much of my mana? When she had given Ash the leaf, she thought it would draw only a small portion of her energy, enough to form a basic teleportation portal. Yet the power it was draining now was immense, far beyond what she had ever imagined. The amount of mana being consumed was close to half of her total reserves. The world tree's mana was special. It was nearly limitless, yet not infinite. Through her roots, she could absorb energy directly from the world of Ecumia itself. Whenever her mana was used, it was instantly replenished from the depths of the land, creating a constant balance that made her seem inexhaustible. That was also why the demonic heart had once tried to possess her. It craved her pure energy, though the reason for that hunger still remained unknown. What she did not know was that Ash was not opening a portal between two physical places. He was opening one inside his own soul. The very thought would have been called madness if anyone had heard it. To open a spatial rift within one's soul was something no sane being would attempt. The enormous amount of mana being used was for two reasons. The first was the location, his soul. The second was the time difference. The flow of time within Ash's soul was not the same as the outside world. The difference between the times of two places caused the portal to devour mana at an extraordinary rate. In a matter of moments, half of her pure energy vanished, and a small green portal appeared before her. The scale of what she had lost was staggering. Even when compared to the total mana capacity of a saint, it was at least 10 times greater. That much amount of mana was absorbed within seconds. Though the portal still consumed mana to stay active, the drain had slowed significantly. With her constant absorption rate, she could easily maintain it for some time without issue. Before long, all the elven saints gathered before her, their expressions filled with concern. Serena arrived moments later, her steps quick and her face pale. "Great Mother, are you all right? Did someone attack you?" Serena asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her effort to stay composed. The World Tree's avatar smiled softly and placed her hand on Serena's head. To her, the young queen's genuine worry looked almost endearing. Tears glimmered in Serena's eyes, though she tried to hold them back, remembering her position. "She is just a big baby." The World Tree shook her head lightly and said with a gentle tone, "It's nothing serious. The portal I created simply consumed a large amount of my mana. That is why there was a sudden disturbance. You don't need to worry." Although none of the saints had spoken up like Serena, their expressions carried the same concern. Ever since they had learned that the reason their great mother once fell silent was due to a plot by the demons, their hatred for the demonic race had deepened. They had been ready to wage war then and there, if not for her stopping them and reminding them that the time had not yet come. So when they sensed another disturbance today, every one of them rushed here without hesitation, ready to fight. Eloan, Serena's aunt, was the first to speak. "Are you sure, Mother? Just say the word. If those demons have attacked again, we will obliterate them all." The moment her words left her mouth, every saint in the area released their battle intent, the air itself trembling under their combined power. The World Tree smiled again and shook her head slowly. "As I said, there is nothing to worry about." Her calm tone eased their hearts, and they calmed their horses, though questions still lingered in their eyes. They were all wondering the same thing. Where did this mysterious portal lead, and why had it caused such chaos while forming? Before they could voice those questions, the portal rippled. The green light within it shifted and twisted. Then, in the next second, someone stepped out. Seeing the person, Every saint froze in shock. As soon as Ash uttered the words, "Open," it was as if a reaction had occurred. The room he had created began to tremble, and the runes carved on the glowing walls shone even brighter, humming softly as energy gathered around him. Ash staggered, his body losing balance before he fell to his knees, clutching his head tightly. A sharp and sudden pain pierced through his mind, right at the center of his glabella, where the entrance to his soul was located. It was not just pain. It felt like something enormous and invisible was pressing down on him, a weight too heavy to bear. The strange part was that this heaviness did not come from his body, but from his soul itself, as if an unseen mountain was being placed upon it. Because of that pressure, his breathing became rough and shallow. Each breath felt heavier than the last, and the throbbing in his head grew sharper. Ugh! The pain suddenly deepened, and the pressure on his soul grew even stronger at the same time. Except for those two sensations, he didn't feel anything else. His mana wasn't being consumed, nor was his life force affected. Even though his soul was clearly straining under the weight, it didn't seem to be breaking apart. Whether that was because of Ash's mutated soul, the strange properties of his soul vault, or some other reason entirely, he couldn't tell. Slowly but surely, a green portal began to form in front of him. It appeared quietly at first, then stabilized into a swirling circular gate that released a faint wind as it pulsed. Ash remained kneeling, his eyes closed, until after a few minutes, the pressure faded, and his headache started to ease. When the pain was finally gone, he stood up and rubbed the side of his head. Why is it that, even though this is not my physical body, I can still feel pain in my head? He complained inwardly, but he knew no one would answer him. Putting that aside, Ash turned his gaze toward the newly formed green portal. A small grin tugged at his lips. At least, I succeeded in making a portal inside my soul. Ash couldn't help but feel pleased with himself. It wasn't something he had personally created, but it still counted as his success. The idea itself was crazy enough that no one would attempt it, but he did and succeeded. If he could refine it further and deepen his understanding of space, he might be able to make such portals on his own one day. He had already been experimenting with a teleportation spell apart from his transcendent step, but it was still far from perfect. It activated slowly, and worse, it sent him to random places. The cause of that was simple: he didn't fully grasp the concept yet. There were many theories about spatial teleportation, but none of them were complete. Most people didn't care to study the deeper logic behind it, since magic circles already did the job. And because space was a rare element, there weren't many people capable of researching it properly. Even if there were, Ash had no access to their work. Coming back to the present situation, Ash frowned slightly as he thought of something. But how will I enter it? Many would probably call him stupid for asking such a question, since the portal was right in front of him. All he had to do was step inside with his body. His thoughts halted. Body? How could his body possibly enter a place that existed inside his own soul? Damn! I never thought about it before attempting this. He wanted to slap himself. How could he overlook something this basic? The more he thought about it, the more ridiculous it sounded. After silently cursing his carelessness for a while, Ash took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Right, even if I can't enter it myself, I can still use it to send the slaves through. At least it won't go to waste. With that, his expression softened slightly, determination replacing frustration, as he stared at the glowing green portal once more. He looked at the portal regretfully and was just about to return to the real world when he stopped. Why don't I try once and see what happens? Now that the portal was standing right before him, it would be foolish not to at least try. If nothing happened, he would simply go back. But if, by some chance? Ash didn't finish the thought. Instead, he took a breath and stepped into the portal. The moment he did, a strange sensation spread across his body, and his body in the real world, hidden deep in the shadows, vanished completely. A wave of dizziness hit him. His vision blurred for a moment as the familiar feeling of teleportation washed over him. Crazy. This is a glitch. He didn't have time to think about how he was able to teleport, and even if he did, he could only guess. Pushing the confusion to the back of his mind, Ash adjusted his blurry vision and looked around. All around him, the elves stood frozen, staring at him with wide eyes. Their shock was written clearly across their faces. He recognized them immediately. They were the saints of the elven continent. Among them was Serena, the elf queen. Her eyes trembled with disbelief, her expression pale as if she had just seen a ghost. Ash offered her a small, casual smile, then turned his attention to the world tree, which regarded him with a frown. Is she mad or something? Well, whatever. I should hurry, otherwise that item will end up being auctioned. He knew he could simply steal the item right now, but doing so would draw the attention of the black market's higher authorities. That would only make taking anything else later far more difficult. "Hi," he said, his tone casual yet firm. "Can you send someone across the portal? I'll be transporting the people behind it in large numbers, but I can't stay there to guide them to enter the portal. I need someone to take over that role. Can you find someone to handle that?" The moment his words fell, silence spread across the area like a ripple. The saints' faces darkened, their expressions twisting in disbelief and anger. A heavy pressure filled the air as they released their aura, intent on making Ash kneel or at least cough blood from the sheer force. They wanted nothing more than to kill him where he stood. But since the Great Mother had acknowledged that she herself created the portal, and since Ash was speaking to her so casually, they didn't dare act recklessly. Not until they were sure if Great Mother knew him. Still, his tone, his words, his attitude, everything about how casually he spoke with their Great Mother, irked them to no end. "How dare you speak casually with our Great Mother? This human brat! I will kill him!" The air trembled with their fury. Their combined aura pressed down on him like a mountain, shaking the space around. Ash stood still, unfazed. He scratched his cheek and let out a light sigh. "Well, your presence does not affect me anyway." Ash did not speak loudly, knowing it would scratch their pride. He did not know what to say to them, so instead of replying, he turned his gaze toward the world tree. She was holding Serena by the mouth, her hands wrapped around the elf's arms and body to keep her still. Was she trying to shield me from their combined aura? It wasn't impossible. If Serena had stepped between him and the saints, they would have immediately withdrawn their aura to avoid harming their queen. But doing that would have meant injuring herself, and even if the world tree could heal her later, the act itself was reckless. Ash shook his head softly, a faint frown forming on his face. "How stupid," he muttered under his breath. He was always dense when it came to emotions. Other than Alicia, he never noticed when someone's heart leaned toward him. Whether he acted unaware on purpose, just to avoid dealing with feelings, or was genuinely dense, no one could tell. But his words, which were meant for Serena, were completely misunderstood. The saints around him stiffened, their faces twisting in anger as their pride burned like fire. They thought Ash was calling them stupid. "You dare insult us? This human brat. I'll kill him." The killing intent that spread through the air was heavy enough to crush a lesser being. Their combined aura made the ground tremble slightly, wind swirling around the massive roots of the world tree. Ash didn't react. He stood still, scratching his cheek lightly, watching their fury rise like an approaching storm. Just as the saints were about to attack, a voice rang out that froze everything in an instant. "Stop!" The command came from the world tree herself, her voice echoing through the space with calm authority. The air went still, and the saints, though still filled with anger, immediately lowered their heads. Even the oldest among them, the council head, who rarely bowed to anyone, stood silently like a scolded child. The pressure vanished as they obediently withdrew their aura. "It's quite rude to call my children stupid in front of them, don't you think?" the world tree said, her voice soft but carrying a trace of coldness beneath it. Ash, however, didn't even flinch. His eyes stayed calm and unreadable as he replied, "I didn't call them stupid. It was meant for someone else. Anyway, I've already said what I had to. Just send someone capable across the portal. The number of people coming will be in the thousands, and they'll belong to various races." The World Tree stared at him quietly. Her gaze carried both curiosity and confusion. Even after being suppressed by 8 saints, Ash stood there without the slightest sign of injury or exhaustion. In truth, she had originally intended to punish him a little for using half of her mana without permission. But now, seeing him completely fine made her hesitate. Instead of anger, something else filled her. A faint spark of intrigue. How very interesting. All right, let's start. Ash thought as he stood at the edge of the large warehouse, the place where the slave section had begun. The air was heavy and cold, filled with the faint metallic scent of chains and iron. He was dressed in the same outfit and mask he had worn when entering the auction house, though his coat was now reversed. Over that, he drew a black cloak, its fabric thick and shadowed, meant to hide every bit of information about him that could be traced. Closing his eyes for a moment, Ash steadied his breath. His mind went quiet as he began calculating routes, escape paths, and the exact sequence of moves he would take. Every second mattered. He had to collect everything and delay alerting the security for as long as possible. Thanks to Snow's help, the layout of the vaults was already clear in his memory. He could teleport directly inside them with precision. The only problem was timing. He had to make sure he did not alert the guards too early. Ash opened his eyes, and faint streaks of blue lightning flickered at their corners. Inside his body, lightning roared and sparked through every nerve, heightening his awareness. Lightning instinct activated across his forehead, hidden beneath concealment. Then, with a calm expression, he triggered Omni-Thought. The world seemed to slow around him as his mind processed every detail at incredible speed. Absolute concealment remained active, completely erasing his presence. A heartbeat later, Ash vanished. Within his grayed world of movement, he appeared inside a cage filled with humans. They were chained together, their faces lifeless, eyes dulled by despair. Without wasting even a fraction of a second, Ash touched the chains that bound them. In an instant, they disappeared. Learning from that first teleport, this time he appeared directly above the chain and let his foot brush it lightly. The group vanished again. He appeared beside the next cage and repeated the process, each time leaving the cage empty. Ash moved relentlessly, using Transcendent Step over and over, his figure splitting into faint afterimages that blurred across the warehouse. With every flash, more captives disappeared. Within 10 seconds, 200 people were gone. Within another 10 seconds, 340 more vanished. Then, within the next 10 seconds, 460 disappeared. His speed only increased. Every teleport flowed into the next, forming a rhythm that pushed his limits even further. Not all the captives were human. Nearly half were, while hundreds were elves, several dwarves, and a handful of demons were locked in the other cages. When transporting humans, elves, and dwarves, he removed only them, leaving the cages behind. But when it came to beasts or demons, he transported their entire cages. He couldn't risk them rampaging inside his soul vault. Containment was safer than chaos. If anyone had been watching, they would have seen countless figures of Ash moving together like a storm of shadows, consuming cages one after another like a wave that devoured everything in its path. In another 15 seconds, the last batch of 476 slaves vanished, leaving the once crowded section completely empty. But Ash didn't stop. He knew he had barely 30 seconds left before security caught sight of him through the drone footage. He had to move fast. Vanishing, he appeared at the far end of the warehouse, diagonally opposite to the slave section he was earlier in. Ash extended his hand. With a light touch, entire metal compartments shimmered and vanished into thin air. He knew taking such large sections at once would increase the chances of being caught, but collecting the boxes placed on the compartments one by one would take far too long. He had no other choice. He continued rapidly, clearing 15 massive metal rows that stretched up to the ceiling. And the moment the 16th one vanished, the entire warehouse came alive with red light. A loud siren blared through the air. Alert! 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 Emergency protocol activated. An unseen wave of energy passed by Ash. He felt it brush against his skin, yet he couldn't understand what kind of force it was or what exactly it did. As expected, they caught on fast. Even so, Ash stayed calm. In his eyes, everything was still moving slowly, as if the entire world had entered his pace. There was no need to rush, even though he still had many things left to take. But the next instant, the unseen energy swept across the room once more, and Ash instantly vanished from his spot. Abandoning the section he had been plundering, he reappeared above a large runic array carved into the floor. Around the glowing formation stood several people, each holding boxes, and some even had cages, clearly preparing to move the valuables somewhere else after hearing the alarm. "Oh no, you don't." Ash's eyes sharpened. In the blink of an eye, he appeared beside the item he had entered the auction for. Instantly, he stored the box within his soul vault. Before anyone could even blink, he seemed to appear all over the place, moving like a blur. Every valuable that was meant for the auction vanished one after another along with him. The workers of the black market could not comprehend what was happening. To them, Ash looked like a dark phantom sweeping through the area, stealing everything in sight and disappearing before they could even turn their heads. All gates shut down. Mana Sealing Array activated. Anti-teleportation array activated. Protective shield activated. Combat drone mode on. Threat level 2. A series of cold mechanical voices echoed through the large warehouse, one after another, as if the entire black market had declared war on a single intruder. From above, hundreds of drones began to descend, their red sensors glowing like eyes of beasts. They immediately opened fire, sending dozens of laser beams toward Ash. But he easily dodged them, his figure flickering like lightning. The blasts that missed him struck the nearby metal containers. Yet instead of damage, an invisible barrier absorbed the impact, leaving only faint ripples of light. Ash narrowed his eyes slightly. That invisible barrier was troublesome. If he couldn't physically touch the metal frames, how was he supposed to take them? As if something like this will stop me. At the same time, he sensed several powerful presences approaching rapidly from every direction. Instead of panic, a small grin formed on his lips. They just gave me a booster. Idiots. In a blink, Ash reappeared inside the barrier itself. His hand brushed against the nearest metal frame, and in an instant, it was gone, stored safely within his soul vault. Meanwhile, the attacks from the combat drones continued to fall, yet every single one of them was absorbed harmlessly by the same protective mechanism that the black market had deployed. For Ash, things suddenly became far easier than he had expected. What guards? What surveillance? What combat drones? Everything that was meant to stop him only ended up protecting him instead. If Ash had known that the black market's own shields would serve as his cover, he wouldn't have bothered with such an elaborate plan in the first place. While chaos spread through the facility, Ash's grin widened. Everyone else was panicking in confusion and fear, while he alone found himself enjoying every second of it. Stop him! What the hell are you all doing? He is stealing things right in front of our eyes. Can anyone tell me why the hell can he teleport? Where the hell are the array masters? I will kill them all if the array is not working. Yes, sir. Everything is working perfectly. There is no error. The security head in charge of overall security for the 5th layer shouted with bloodshot eyes, veins pulsing with rage. He grabbed the worker who had spoken and shoved him toward the CCTV monitors. If it is working, how the hell is he using mana? Teleporting and storing things? The worker trembled and could not speak. The security head shoved him harder and barked, "Turn off the emergency protocol at once. Damn you! Why are you moving so slowly?" Frustration flooded him as he watched the CCTV. Ash teleporting inside the shields and taking an entire metal compartment as if it were nothing. Around him, the other operators of 5th layer security sweated and shook, hands trembling on their controls. SS sir, it is impossible to stop the emergency protocol once initiated. We can only increase the threat level other than... The worker's sentence cut off when the security head seized him by the throat, lifting him clear off the floor. Which idiot did not add a function to stop something like this? The security head's face went red, and his eyes bulged. If looks could kill, the trembling worker would already be dead. "Yes, sir. You were the one who removed it." The security head froze. He remembered. During testing, he had advised removing the emergency protocol stop switch, arguing a skilled hacker could exploit it. Back then, he had been praised and even rewarded for that suggestion. Now the memory twisted his stomach. Damn! Increase the threat level to maximum. Call headquarters for assistance. Send every single guard to surround that bastard. He threw the worker aside and sprinted toward where Ash had been seen last. Damn! 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 I'm doomed! He knew nothing would change easily, even if every person present rushed the thief. The reason was the shield protecting the goods, the same damn shield the thief was using as cover while stealing. The shield is linked to the main attack mechanism of the whole black market. Every attack on it gets absorbed, and that same energy is used to power counterattacks. The function had been designed so that, if needed, combat drones and automatic guns would keep firing with enough power to injure a legendary and kill a grandmaster. They would fire without stopping. Of course, the system had weaknesses like the domain and other abilities. That was why the anti-teleportation array and mana sealing array were always used before the shield was deployed, so nobody could escape or use their abilities. In such a trap, anyone caught was meant to die while the facility stayed unharmed. But where the hell did this ghost come from? No array is affecting him, and he is using the shields to protect himself from all those attacks. If that bastard escapes now, I will be executed on the spot for suggesting the removal of that function. A shudder ran through him as he pushed harder and closed the distance. As a legendary ranked person, he intended to stop Ash personally, even knowing it was going to be futile. Stop right there, you bastard. Increasing threat level. Threat level. Max. Tracking missiles deployed. Mana guns deployed. Increasing damage output. Damage output. Max. Launching. The entire black market shook violently as the metallic walls and floor shifted with a deep mechanical rumble. Panels slid open, and from within, countless turrets, mana cannons, and missile pods emerged, glowing with deadly light. The air filled with the mechanical whine of charged energy and the sharp hum of mana circuits coming alive. Ash only gave a single glance to the chaos around him before turning his attention back to plundering. More than half of the warehouse had already vanished into his soul vault. Only a small section remained. The barrier surrounding the metal compartments made everything easier. He didn't need to dodge or defend himself. He simply continued collecting everything in sight. Still, he kept his senses sharp, scanning the surroundings carefully. He wasn't foolish enough to believe things would stay this way forever. If they somehow managed to disable the shield, things could turn dangerous quickly. But so far, judging by their panicked shouting and frantic actions, it was clear they couldn't. Still, he was cautious. Stop right there, you bastard. The voice exploded through the air, shaking the warehouse. Ash froze for a brief moment and turned. A middle-aged man was soaring toward him, his body radiating intense killing intent. He hurled a spear covered in a blinding aura straight at Ash. The weapon ripped through space itself, its speed almost impossible to track. Ash's eyes narrowed as he felt the world itself bend under the pressure of that attack. Power of domain. He immediately recognized the sensation. The spear was wrapped in the power of a domain. Unsure if the barrier could withstand that level of force, Ash didn't take chances. He teleported instantly, taking another metal compartment with him. The security head saw Ash vanish again and roared in frustration. Flying through the air, he swung his arm sharply, and the spear changed direction mid-flight, now chasing Ash relentlessly through the air. Seeing the spear closing in, Ash gritted his teeth and pushed his skill further. Mana rippled around him as he flickered between locations, teleporting again and again. A heartbeat later, the spear crashed into the barrier around him. At that exact moment, the barrage began. Dozens of tracking missiles, mana beams, and laser cannons converged all at once. Boom! The world turned white. The explosion thundered through the entire underground complex. The walls shook, the ground cracked, and shockwaves tore through the air. For a few moments, Ash couldn't see anything. His vision was filled with blinding light, his ears ringing. But through it all, he felt no pain, no heat, no pressure. The barrier held. Relief passed through his mind. With a faint smirk, he didn't wait for the light to fade. In the very next second, his body shimmered and vanished again, teleporting away before the smoke and light cleared. When the glare finally dimmed, the security head's expression was a twisted mix of rage and despair. The legendary barrier that the black market had prided itself on for years, the almost impenetrable one, was now being used as a tool for theft. Even the Human Association had failed to breach it for decades. That barrier could block all attacks below Saint rank and could endure 10 full-powered strikes from a Saint before collapsing. Of course, the black market had always hidden this weakness. They never allowed the Saints to strike more than 5 or 6 times. If the Human Association or the other organizations ever learned that the barrier could break after 10 strikes, the entire organization would face calamity. This formation wasn't even created by anyone present in the world of Acumia. The technology and people were not that advanced. It was something the black market team found in a dungeon, technology that was far beyond what humanity could replicate. Damn it, this is useless. The security head clenched his fists tightly. He knew better than anyone how powerful the barrier was. He had personally tested it many times. Only one person can disable this barrier, but that person is far away. It will take time for him to get here, and I don't have that time. His eyes darted toward the warehouse as he watched the metallic shelves vanish one by one. Despair clawed at his chest. We're running out of time. Suddenly, his senses flared. Multiple powerful presences appeared nearby. Turning his head, he saw figures emerging from a teleportation circle that had formed behind him. One after another, they flew through the air, their numbers increasing rapidly. Every single one of them carried the overwhelming pressure of a Grandmaster or higher. Within seconds, a single figure appeared in front of them all. A man whose mere presence twisted the air itself. The aura around him was suffocating, vast, and heavy. A mythical rank powerhouse. The mythical ranked man appeared beside the security head, his face dark and unreadable. Even without speaking, his aura carried clear anger and frustration. The security head felt the same despair spreading through his own chest. Just standing next to that man, he could feel how tense and unstable the situation had become. The black market hierarchy was extremely strict. Even if someone wished to join and become a core member, they first had to reach the Grandmaster rank. Without that, no matter how talented or ambitious they were, they would never be allowed to touch the inner workings of the organization. Those ranked below were treated as disposable assets. They never received highly confidential missions and could be replaced or discarded at any time if the situation demanded it. The hierarchy began with Grandmaster, followed by Legendary, then Mythical. Above all of them stood the Black Market Head, the one who oversaw everything from the shadows. His rank was uncertain. There were many smaller ranks in between, but this was the basic structure that formed the market's foundation. Every member was required to sign a mana contract upon joining, one that bound their life and soul to the black market. This contract not only ensured loyalty but also allowed members to use their abilities even inside sealed formations or restricted layers, such as the 5th layer, where normal mana usage became impossible once the emergency protocol triggered. And now, at this very moment, all those guards who once stood proud were forced to watch their treasury being robbed right in front of their eyes. Many more guards arrived one after another, but no one could do anything. They floated midair, their faces filled with frustration as their fists clenched tightly. No matter how much they wanted to intervene, they couldn't do anything. Kyle, the branch head of this whole place, stood among them. As a mythical rank, he was supposed to safeguard this entire division, but right now, the entire treasury of the branch was being stripped bare under his watch. "When will that person come?" Kyle asked, his voice hoarse and heavy, as if each word carried his frustration and guilt. The security head beside him replied in a low, strained tone. 5 minutes. Damn it. He will escape before that. Right now, the black market's most prized treasure, the ancient Paradox Formation, which once protected the organization like an impenetrable shield, had turned into a curse. This formation was the reason for the black market's arrogance. It could repel even domains, making infiltration nearly impossible. But today, that same formation had become their downfall, trapping them in their own fortress. While despair filled the air, Ash calmly stored the last metal compartment. His gaze met Kyle's and the security head's for a moment. Surrounded by thousands of grandmasters, he still dared to smirk behind the cloak, raise a thumbs up, and disappear into thin air. Kyle's entire face turned red, veins bulging as his rage boiled. That thief! That thief! Never in his life had he been humiliated like this. Never. Before he could even curse Ash further, the alarms blared again. The intruder has entered storage vaults. Alert! 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 What? Both Kyle and the security head shouted in disbelief, their faces paling as the words sank in. Damn it! When will that person arrive? The security head roared toward the control room, his voice trembling with panic. Sir. To 3 minutes. Just 3 minutes more. A nervous voice stammered through the earpiece. The security head's hands began to shake uncontrollably. I'm done for. This is the end. He knew what that meant. 3 minutes were enough for the deed to be done. No one, not even high-ranking officers, had permission to enter the storage vaults. Only a few select individuals could do so, and their number could be counted on one hand. Now everything inside will be destroyed, and I'll be the one blamed for it all. He let out a hollow laugh, accepting the grim reality that awaited him. Kyle stood silently beside him, his eyes trembling with a mix of fury and despair. Deep down, he knew the same truth. The responsibility for this disaster would fall entirely on them. Meanwhile, Ash, who had just appeared inside the first vault, was greeted by an overwhelming sight. Mountains of gold coins reflected the faint light, their brilliance almost blinding. Every corner of the vault shimmered with wealth and history, the air itself thick with mana and the faint metallic scent of magic-infused gold. But the beauty of it all lasted only a moment. The soft golden glow filling the room suddenly turned red, washing everything in a dark hue that screamed danger. The intruder has entered storage vaults. Alert! 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 The repeating alarms echoed through the vast chamber, but Ash paid them no mind. He had already grown used to it. His expression remained calm, almost indifferent, as he began to store the treasures one after another. Yet this time it was slower. The vault was different. The treasures were not grouped in the large metal compartments like before, but arranged individually, so one needed to touch them individually. Vaults have been breached. Ancient Paradox Formation activated. The air trembled, and before Ash could react, a thick, colorless barrier surged up from the floor, spreading outward like rippling liquid light. It hit him with immense force, throwing his body against the far wall. Cracks split through the wall behind him, and a sharp pain ran through his body. The force pressing on him thickened with a crushing intent. Without wasting a second, Ash teleported, his figure flickering before reappearing inside the barrier. He barely managed to take a breath when another barrier burst from the ground. This time, his reflexes moved faster than thought. He teleported again, vanishing just as the new barrier sealed itself. Behind him, both barriers overlapped perfectly and came to a stop, forming a solid cage of translucent power that hummed with silent tension. Detected. Intruder exceeds designated threat level. The voice of the AI was cold and emotionless, yet Ash felt a chill run down his spine. A bad premonition coiled inside his chest like a serpent. He tightened his grip, channeling mana into his hand as he focused on the heaps of gold piled high. With a sweep of his hand, all the coins vanished into his storage. But despite that, the vault still held countless treasures. Detected. Formations ineffective against the intruder. Hearing that, the faint trace of a smile that had been on Ash's face disappeared. His eyes turned cold and sharp. His instincts told him something far worse was coming. Seeking permission to self-destruct. Permission granted. Thud. 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 A deep echo filled the vault as several locks sealed into place. The walls pulsed with red light, and from above, a glowing timer appeared near the ceiling, counting down from 30 seconds. Shit, Ash muttered under his breath. He didn't move recklessly. Instead, his eyes narrowed, and his mind began to burn with intensity. The world around him slowed until everything froze in place. The falling dust, the flickering light, even the small particles in the air stopped moving. In that gray stillness, Ash exhaled slowly. He had pushed Omni-Thought to its limit. Time had not truly stopped, but his mind was processing at such extreme speed that it might as well have. In the beginning, when he first created Omni-Thought, using it even briefly would knock him unconscious. His brain simply couldn't handle the strain. But after everything he had gone through, after countless battles and carrying the burden of Dark Ash's memories, his mind had become far stronger. He could now sustain the technique for hours without losing control. Yet, now pushing it to its maximum, his head throbbed as if it were about to split open. His blood ran hot, and every thought felt like a spark bursting in his skull. Still, Ash stayed focused. What should I do now? Should I just take what I can and leave the rest? Should I risk everything to grab more? Even if I can't die, these treasures might still be destroyed. His gaze drifted to the barrier surrounding the vault. The shield is meant to protect the vault, not the treasures. That means they're planning to destroy everything inside if someone tries to steal it. His thoughts turned faster. Wait, could this be a trick? What if there isn't going to be an explosion at all? What if it's just a psychological trap meant to make intruders panic and flee? For a moment, his expression softened as logic kicked in. No, the black market is too rich. They can afford to lose what's here. The true treasures would be with the black market head, sealed in his own spatial ring. These are just offerings compared to that. 29 seconds. Ash vanished and appeared inside the next vault. The same red light greeted him. The same cold ticking sound filled the air. The timer floated above again. He checked 2 more vaults, confirming that the countdown was active everywhere. 28 seconds. Reappearing back in the first vault, he ran his fingers through his hair. His head was burning, veins standing out across his temples, but his expression remained calm. His mind refused to slow down. 25 seconds. He searched every inch of the vault for explosives or hidden triggers. He phased through the floor, scanned the mana flow inside the formation circuits. There was nothing. 20 seconds. No signs of explosives or hidden formations. Still, the timer kept ticking, the glowing red numbers reflected in his eyes. Even then, there was no fear in him. His breathing stayed slow and steady, every heartbeat measured. 15 seconds. He had found no solution, no path to take everything at once. Regret began to creep in slowly, sinking into his chest like cold water. Maybe he had been too greedy this time. If only he had been more cautious, more patient, maybe things would have gone differently. He could have stolen far more than this without getting caught in such a trap. Perhaps he had been too arrogant. 14 seconds. If only I could take the whole vault. His eyes widened. Wait, can I actually take the whole vault? He had never once considered trying to store something this massive inside his soul space. The thought was ridiculous, yet possible. His soul vault allowed him to store anything that existed in reality. Living beings, artifacts, even runes. Then another thought surfaced, one that froze him where he stood. Even if it works, I still haven't found the source of the self-destruction. What if the explosion happens inside my soul space? The answer was simple. If that happened, his soul would shatter completely. And this time, Ash would die for real. Ash thought for a very long time, his mind overflowing with countless ideas and possibilities that collided and tangled with one another. Thousands of thoughts flashed through him all at once, each competing for his attention as he tried to make sense of the situation. At the same time, he extended his will into the surrounding walls, letting his senses flow through the dense material like invisible waves. Even though he had already checked once, he checked again, refusing to leave even a single doubt behind. It was then that he noticed something strange. 13 seconds. Outside the thick wall of the vault, where the stone of the underground began, he sensed something. A familiar structure buried beneath layers of rock. It was the same barrier that had encased the vault, pulsing with power. Wait. He focused, scanning carefully once more. He knew that 2 barriers had been raised earlier, and when he checked, they were overlapping each other at that time. But now he realized they had moved apart. The first barrier was positioned outside the vault. It glowed faintly white, almost transparent, like thin glass catching the light. The second barrier, however, was only a small distance away from the vault's outer surface, and it was slowly changing color. At first, the difference was subtle, but then Ash noticed it clearly. Only the inner barrier was turning red, while the outer one remained exactly the same. That was when understanding struck him, sudden and sharp, like a bolt of lightning flashing in his head. The barrier is the source of the explosion. The inner one will detonate, while the outer one is meant to contain it. As soon as he realized that, he felt a heavy weight lift from his shoulders. His body relaxed slightly, and his racing mind found clarity once again. 12 seconds. There was still a small chance, barely even a fraction, that he was wrong. But Ash didn't care. If I'm wrong, I'll die. If I'm right, I'll live. There's no point in fearing what hasn't happened. Even if there was a microscopic chance of dying, it didn't bother him. Death was nothing new to him. He had already experienced it so many times that fear no longer had meaning. He has confidence in his deduction. Freed from the last traces of hesitation, Ash made his move. Store the whole vault. The command echoed inside his mind, and instantly, the entire vault vanished into nothingness. In the blink of an eye, only rough earth, stone, and silence remained where once the great vault had stood. A wild urge to laugh rose inside him, almost uncontrollable, but he forced it down. Time was running short, and wasting even a single second could cost him everything. 2 seconds. It's done. A deep sense of satisfaction filled his chest. Within 10 seconds, he had successfully stored all 20 vaults, and now he still had 2 seconds to spare. Let's leave this place before the explosion happens. So with everything secured, Ash vanished without a trace. And 2 seconds later, meanwhile, a few moments ago, this place is quite small. Serena thought to herself as her eyes wandered across the walls covered in glowing runes. Each line pulsed faintly, like veins carrying light through stone. The soft hum of energy in the air mixed with the faint ripple of the green portal standing behind her, its light shimmering like water. Although all the saints had refused to let Serena enter such an unknown place just to act as a guide for the slaves, in the end, they were persuaded by the will of the World Tree itself. The saints were beings of immense power, their souls vast enough to influence the world around them. And so, if something with a soul that heavy tried to enter the soul of another being, what would happen? The result was simple. The host's soul would collapse under the sheer pressure. Even though Ash possessed a mutated soul, this matter was far beyond ordinary. His soul vault, along with the portal created from the leaf of the World Tree, could allow the entry of living beings inside his soul space, but only up to a certain limit. Those with souls too powerful could never pass through. Saints also realized this when they tried to pass through. That was when Serena had stepped forward and volunteered to act as the guide. The saints were furious that their queen herself would lower her status to act as a mere guide, but eventually, under the calm words and steady gaze of their great mother, they had to agree. Half a day has passed already. Where are the slaves? Serena frowned slightly as she turned her gaze back toward the portal. Ash had told her that time flowed differently inside this space, much faster than outside, so she might have to wait longer. She had accepted it, thinking that the difference was only a few hours. But she was proven wrong. Still, curiosity burned inside her more than impatience. She wanted to understand what kind of place this truly was. Without windows, doors, or even a visible ceiling, it was impossible to tell where she was. The faint glow of the runes was her only source of light. She tried using the location tracker given to her by the saints, but its crystal had gone dim. Are the symbols on the walls blocking the signal? Or is this place itself isolated from the world? Finding no answer, she sighed softly and let her thoughts drift toward Ash. Her feelings for him hadn't faded. If anything, they grew stronger with every passing day. Everything about him drew her in. His calm voice, his piercing gaze, his stubborn resolve that stood against impossible odds. Even though he often acted cold, pretending to be emotionless, she had seen through him long ago. He was kind. He cared even if he tried not to show it. How did she know that? It was a woman's intuition, something deeper than reason, something her heart just understood. A small smile formed on her lips, but before she could think further, the entire room began to tremble. The space stretched outward at a speed that made her alarmed. The runes on the walls flared with bright light as countless figures began appearing all around her. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, hundreds. In a continuous surge, people materialized out of thin air, some trapped in chains, others locked inside metallic cages. The faint clinking of metal mixed with gasps and murmurs as more and more filled the space. Even some beasts appeared, their eyes dim with exhaustion, yet filled with wild fear. Serena blinked, momentarily stunned, before a laugh escaped her lips. "Well, that's a lot at the same time," she muttered, shaking her head lightly. As the endless stream of slaves and creatures continued to appear, Serena began guiding them one after another, her calm voice echoing in the vast room that had grown from nothing. While she managed the chaos unfolding inside, something was happening elsewhere. Fifth layer, Black Market. Outside the grand auction. The young master is inside. Let's not cause a large scene here. A man with a slightly muscular build spoke firmly, his calm but commanding tone silencing the group behind him. He stood at the front of 10 figures, all dressed in identical black uniforms, their faces hidden behind masks that reflected faint glimmers from the dim lights above. "Yes, sir," all 10 replied in perfect unison, their voices steady and sharp. Without hesitation, several among them dissolved into the shadows, their forms melting into the darkness until nothing remained. The rest faded from sight, their presence blending seamlessly with the surroundings. The man leading them, clearly their captain, wore a mask slightly different from the others, darker in shade, marked with thin silver lines that formed a sigil at its center. His aura was calm but heavy, the kind that made others instinctively step aside. He began walking toward the grand auction house, the others trailing behind like ghosts that followed his will. The guards stationed at the entrance straightened immediately the moment they saw him. Without a word, they bowed and gestured him inside. Once his identity was confirmed, they personally guided him toward room 1. Knock! Knock! Inside, the same attendant girl who had previously been instructed by Ash not to disturb him until the auction ended stood before the door, trembling slightly. She hesitated, but when the silence stretched too long, she gathered courage and knocked again. Knock! Knock! Still, there was no answer. The muscular man spoke from behind her, his tone low but firm. "Open it. You will not be punished, even if the young master gets angry." His words brought little comfort, but enough for her to move. The girl swallowed hard, nodded faintly, and reached into her apron, pulling out a silver card that shook slightly in her trembling hand. Click! The sound of the lock opening echoed louder than expected in the tense silence. She hesitated again, but the man gave a single nod, motioning for her to proceed. She opened the door and quickly stepped aside. The man entered, his sharp eyes immediately scanning every corner of the room. Empty. He frowned slightly, walking deeper inside. He checked behind the curtains, then pushed open the washroom door. Even that was empty. Not a single trace of anyone. He turned to glance at the attendant. The poor girl stood frozen at the doorway, her eyes wide and her body trembling uncontrollably. Her confusion was genuine. Her face, her posture, everything screamed ignorance. She doesn't know anything, he thought coldly. It was easy for him to tell. His tracking trait wasn't limited to following scents or auras. It allowed him to sense subtle cues, the rhythm of a heartbeat, the faint shifts in energy that revealed intent. And hers showed nothing but fear and confusion. He exhaled slowly and scanned the room once more, his mind piecing together details one by one. Then his gaze caught something, a smartphone placed neatly on the table. Its screen glowed faintly, and there was a call still ongoing. From the speaker in the room, the noise of the auction echoed. Laughter, cheers, the auctioneer's rhythmic voice. He picked up the phone carefully. The instant he did, a shrill beeping began to sound from it, high-pitched and rhythmic, like a warning signal. Before he could even react, the same alarm suddenly echoed throughout the entire auction house. Red lights flashed along the walls, sirens blared, and chaos began to ripple below as the audience stirred in confusion. Then came the rumble. A deep, distant explosion echoed from the phone speaker, followed by several more, one after another. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of destruction spreading through the underground. The man's pupils narrowed sharply. His instincts screamed, his mind analyzing every second of what he was hearing. The young master never came here, but the invitation was used. That means either the thief kidnapped the young master or he didn't dare complete that thought. The weight of that possibility pressed down on his chest. Because if what he was thinking was true, if the young master was truly gone, then this wasn't just a normal matter. It was something that would shake the entire neutral continent to its very core. Boom! A massive explosion shook the entire fifth layer, its sound echoing through every corner. The walls trembled violently under the shockwave, and though the ancient paradox formation prevented the blast from spreading, the power behind it was still terrifying. High above the wreckage, Kyle and the security head floated in the air with hundreds of guards behind them. The sight before them was enough to drain the color from every face. But none looked more lifeless than Kyle and the security head. That single explosion had decided their fate. It proved the security system had activated, and the treasures sealed within the vaults had all been destroyed. As the two stood frozen in silence, a glowing portal appeared below them. The air shimmered, and a young man stepped out of it. He wore golden glasses and, at first glance, looked like an ordinary person. Yet the moment he appeared, everyone dropped to one knee. "Chief Advisor!" they called out together. The young man's calm eyes moved across the scene. His voice was soft, smooth, and oddly pleasant to the ear, but each word struck like a blade. "I arrived as soon as I was notified. Even with all of you here, someone still managed to break through and steal from us. They even entered the vaults." His tone carried no anger, only quiet disappointment. How many were there? What was their strength? The calmness in his voice was more frightening than a shout. Kyle and the security head felt chills crawling up their backs. Neither dared to speak. "I do not like repeating myself." That sentence made their hearts drop. The two men rushed to explain everything, trembling as they spoke. They described everything that happened. Throughout their words, the chief advisor simply listened, adjusting his glasses slightly. His expression did not change even once. "Interesting," he said finally. "Someone who bypassed the mana sealing and anti-teleportation arrays, and even managed to store everything inside the vaults, must be hiding something quite special." Kyle and the security head kept their heads low, their shame burning deeper with each passing second. The chief advisor stood in silence for a while, then turned toward the section where the vaults were. Both men followed behind quietly, afraid to make a sound. The man they followed was not just any figure. He was the strategist behind the black market's success, the one who ensured that, no matter which continent they operated in, they never got caught. His network of information was unmatched, and it was because of him that the black market had never suffered any losses. Until today. The chief advisor opened the vaults one by one and examined them. Every door he opened revealed the same sight: broken stone, collapsed walls, and darkness. After checking the last vault, he turned toward the two men. A small smile appeared on his lips. "Why are you both still standing here? Shouldn't you be chasing the thief?" Both men froze in place. The question alone was enough to make their hearts skip. "Don't tell me, my lord," Cal stammered, "that the thief actually survived the blast and escaped?" The chief advisor's golden glasses reflected the light as he looked at them. "Your thoughts are clouded by fear of death and the weight of failure," he said. "It seems your decision-making has dulled. Perhaps it is time new staff took your place." The color drained completely from their faces. Without a moment's hesitation, both vanished, leaving only their panicked words behind. "We will track the thief to the ends of the world." The chief advisor stood alone amid the ruins, his gaze fixed on the pile of broken stone where the vaults had once been. "To think someone used such a small flaw to steal an entire vault," he murmured. "This thief is quite interesting." He crouched and ran his hand lightly across the rubble. The vaults had been built with a special material that was easy to recognize, yet not even a single piece of it was present. He thought about the structure of the ancient barrier. It was shaped like a half-sphere, its design meant to destroy the vaults and their contents completely while keeping the blast contained. For someone to find that weakness in such a short time and use it perfectly to steal the whole vault before it was destroyed, and in 30 seconds no less. He was beyond impressed. Or perhaps someone from the upper ranks leaked the information to the thief. He straightened, his eyes narrowing behind his golden lenses. He was the one who had given the green signal for the vaults to self-destruct. Under his command, nothing like this had ever happened before. He would rather destroy everything himself than let anyone else profit from him. A chuckle escaped his lips. It has been a long time since things became this interesting. Meanwhile, the thief in question appeared inside the VIP room 1. After escaping the explosion, Ash wanted to retrieve the phone he had left there and disappear immediately. But the moment he arrived, Ash froze. A tall, muscular man stood at the center of the room, his broad back straight, holding the phone in one hand. His expression was calm but sharp, and his eyes locked onto Ash the instant he appeared. For a split second, silence filled the room. The air grew heavy, and neither of them moved. Their eyes met, both studying the other, trying to judge who would act first. Then Ash broke the stillness. His voice carried a hint of mockery, but his gaze was serious. "Nice muscles you got there, dude. Continue your work." As soon as the words left his lips, he gave a casual wave and vanished into thin air. The man's calm face twisted in rage. "Stop right there." Boom! A thunderous explosion tore through the area, shaking the walls violently. The floor split under the pressure, and the lights flickered before bursting. The shock wave threw the muscular man off balance, slamming him against the wall. He couldn't even complete his sentence, let alone activate his domain. The explosion came too fast, and Ash's appearance and disappearance were too quick for him to react. By the time shaking cleared and he stretched his senses in every direction, there was nothing. Not even a trace of the intruder's presence remained. "Find that bastard!" His furious roar echoed across the entire building. At once, all 10 of his subordinates who had been following him vanished into motion, spreading in all directions to hunt for the thief. "Damn! Who was that bodybuilder? Did someone already suspect me?" Ash muttered under his breath as he appeared inside a small, dark cave deep within a mountain range. The air was cool and slightly damp, carrying the earthy scent of moss and rock. The cave was hidden behind a dense wall of trees, its entrance blocked by a massive boulder. He had stayed here once before during his travels across the neutral continent, so it was familiar ground, a safe spot where no one would find him easily. He took a deep breath, calming himself. The exhaustion soon caught up to him. His mana was far lower than he had expected. "Storing those vaults took a lot more mana than I thought," he muttered with a frown. Normally, the mana used to store items was so small that it replenished automatically through the passive absorption of his primordial core. But storing all 20 vaults had drained him heavily, leaving a faint ringing in his head. Without wasting time, he reached into his storage space and brought out 10 bottles filled with a faint blue glow. The liquid inside shimmered like liquid stars. He popped them open one after another and drank them down quickly, feeling the cool rush of mana flowing back into his body. With this, I won't have to worry about absolute concealment dropping due to lack of mana. He exhaled softly, rolling his shoulders as the fatigue began to fade. Then he changed his clothes to something simpler, a plain dark shirt and pants that made him look like an ordinary traveler. After adjusting his sleeves, he rubbed his hands together and smiled faintly, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Now, let's see my treasures, he. Closing his eyes, Ash sank his consciousness inward. The next moment, his surroundings shifted, and he appeared inside his soul vault. Almost everyone had already passed through the portal. The faint hum of its remaining energy filled the air, while only a few hundred beasts and demons still remained, trapped in their cages. They looked restless, their glowing eyes reflecting confusion and a faint trace of fear. Beside the portal, Serena sat calmly on a wooden chair, reading a book. The portal's fading light illuminated her face, making her appear almost serene. Sensing his gaze, she looked up from her book and smiled softly. "You're here. I hope everything went smoothly?" Ash asked as he flashed a small smile. "Yes, nothing to worry about," Serena replied casually. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer, and then she spoke again. "You've changed a little." Ash raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Serena's cheeks flushed faintly as she said, "Before, you were always cold and detached, like nothing in this world could move you. But now, you seem more relaxed, even a bit cheerful. It suits you." Ash blinked in surprise, her words catching him off guard. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Then a quiet laugh escaped his lips. "Haha, really?" Serena smiled lightly, closing her book. "Really?" They talked for a while longer, their conversation flowing easily. The tension that usually surrounded Ash seemed to fade during those moments. But soon, Serena looked back at the portal, which had started flickering weakly, its light becoming unstable. "I should get going," she said softly. "The portal won't hold for much longer. It's draining the energy of the Great Mother even more quickly now." Ash gave a short nod. "All right, be careful." With one last smile, Serena stepped into the portal. The light swallowed her figure, and then the entire portal collapsed in on itself. The faint hum disappeared, leaving behind only silence and a few drifting particles of light that faded into the air. Ash stood there quietly, watching the space where the portal had been. His thoughts wandered to his earlier discussions with the World Tree and the Saints. Most of the slaves would be returned to their respective domains, while the dwarves would stay with the elves. He didn't have to worry about their safety anymore. Everything had been arranged. He let out a slow breath and raised his hand slightly. Records. In an instant, the air shimmered, and a large, old-looking book appeared before him. The cover was dark and made of an unknown material, and faint golden runes glowed across its surface. This was the record, a magical ledger that held the complete list of every item he had in his soul vault. Ash's eyes gleamed slightly as he reached out to open it. Now that everything else was settled, it was time to take a proper look at his spoils. The list of records was very long, divided into detailed sections, and as Ash continued to read through the items one by one, his satisfaction grew steadily with every passing moment. The records contained all kinds of rare treasures, pills, potions, and many other precious things. Pure Soul Essence, X2. Soul Rebirth Elixir EX, X1. Eternal Heart Pill SSS, X1. Elixir of Life SSS, X5. Phoenix Recovery Pill S, X50. Pain Nullification Pill S, X2000. Dragon's Vitality Brew A, X30. Overdrive Pill AX1000. Hunger Kill Potion AX10000. The list kept going endlessly. Even in the section that only listed pills and potions, Ash could already feel a rush of excitement. He had known the black market would hold valuable items, but this was far beyond what he imagined. Each pill carried terrifying effects. Among them, the Soul Rebirth Elixir stood out the most. It could heal soul damage completely, something that was considered impossible even for saints. The fact that the black market had managed to obtain such an elixir was shocking. Ash could only assume it came from a dungeon or an ancient ruin. And then, there was the pure soul essence. It was a priceless treasure capable of nourishing and strengthening the soul itself. He had also once found a small pool of soul essence back in the Dragon Continent. The energy it contained had saved his life in the battle against Dark Ash. And now, he had 2 small vials of it in his possession. Although it won't have a drastic effect like the small pool, it was still something nice. But that was far from all. There were more than 10,000 pills of different grades and effects, and over 50,000 potions, ranging from the lowest rank to the highest. All of them were stored in space rings hidden deep within the black market's vaults, which was why he hadn't seen their true quantity during the raid. Among them were deadly poisons and toxic brews, some so potent that even a saint would be forced to stop for several seconds if struck by them. The more Ash read, the more he felt the thrill building inside him. Then he turned to the next section, and his eyes lit up. Eternium, EX, X50. World Tree's Root, SSS, X25. 10,000-Year Cold Steel, SSS, X1. Void Steel, SS, X200. Soul Stones, SS, X10. Draconic Mana Crystal, S, X100. Moonstone, SX2. Firestone, A, X5000. This section was filled with ores and minerals of all kinds. There were common metals like iron, copper, and steel in huge quantities, while the rarer ores were fewer in number, but still far more than what one could normally find in a lifetime. There were even elemental stones of all kinds of elements. It was a clear display of the black market's wealth and influence across the continent. And it didn't stop there. There were also tens of thousands of mana cores, each harvested from beasts and monsters roaming through dungeons and wilderness. Their ranks ranged from the weakest to the strongest, but what caught Ash's attention the most were the 5 Saint rank and 10 mythical rank cores. Just the sight of them made him pause. He could finally test his theory, whether absorbing mana directly from the cores of these high-rank beasts could help him increase his stats. Still, what truly made him pause were the Eternium and Soul Stones. These were treasures beyond compare. Eternium was the same metal that his soul sword was forged from, and now he had a great amount of it in his hands. The thought stirred something within him. If he wished, he could forge another soul weapon for himself. One equal to his current blade, or perhaps even stronger. As if listening to his thoughts, Eclipse appeared in front of him and buzzed lightly, as if showing its dissatisfaction. "Don't worry, buddy. I don't need another weapon. I have you." Ash smiled bitterly as he pushed the sword away, trying to focus on the list again. But Eclipse buzzed once more, clearly unconvinced by his words. It stayed right beside him, floating near his shoulder as if it didn't trust him to keep his promise. Ash pretended not to notice and continued reading through the records. The same scene repeated itself in the next section, which contained a variety of herbs. They were large in number, some even rare enough to be considered priceless treasures that were almost impossible to find now. Many were ancient-grade herbs that only grew in extreme environments, while others were key ingredients used in crafting high-grade elixirs. They easily numbered in the thousands. For Ash, who was still learning both blacksmithing and alchemy, this kind of resource influx was an incredible blessing. With this much material, he could experiment freely and continue his research without worrying about running out. It was the kind of fortune that most alchemists could only dream of. He realized that even if he worked without rest day and night, it would still take him more than a decade to finish using all these materials. Then came the next section of records, which showed piles of pure wealth. There were mountains of gold coins stacked within the black market's vaults, enough to rival the treasure hoards of royal kingdoms. The total value was close to 100 billion gold coins, a sum so large that even his next 7 generations could live comfortably without lifting a finger. And that wasn't all. His eyes moved to the next recorded category, and his expression changed. The section contained materials from monsters and magical beasts, body parts, cores, and organs taken from powerful creatures across the continents. Each entry carried weight, from common beasts to legendary ones. Heart of Infant Titan EX, X1. Legs of Infant Titan EX, X2. Hands of Infant Titan EX, X2. Vampire Heart, SSS, X1. Dragon Scale, SS, X23. Minotaur Tusk, S, X1463. Cave Serpent Scale, S, X1343. Flame Lizard Scale, S, X357. Shadow Panther Claw, A, X4434. Thunder Fox Whisker, S, X243. Sea Serpent Fin, S, X2432. Flame Rock Feather, A, X433. Night Owl Feather, B+, X234. Goblin Bone Fragment, C, X34335. As soon as his eyes reached the top of the list, Ash froze. His breath caught in his throat. 3 EX-ranked materials. For a moment, his mind went blank. Am I hallucinating or what? He blinked several times, rereading the same lines, but the words didn't change. The very reason he had targeted the auction house was that its final item for sale was the blood of a titan. Even then, he had assumed it to be diluted blood, something similar rather than true divine material. The booklet describing the item clearly labeled it as a legendary material, not an actual divine one. But this was different. These weren't vials of diluted blood. These were actual body parts. Heart, hands, and legs of an infant titan. A divine material that should not even exist anymore. Ash's mind went blank for a moment. Even he didn't know what a titan was truly capable of. He had only read about them in one of the old history books, where they were described as beings from ancient myth. According to the records, titans were massive creatures, so large that their infant stage alone could match the size of a truck. It was said that as they grew, they could become as large as mountains, and if they continued to evolve, they could eventually transform into cosmic beings capable of crossing the stars. And at peak, their size towered above even the solar system and various universes. The history book mentioned that titans vanished from the world long ago because they had transcended it. Their population had always been small, with only 1 or 2 existing at any given time. That was why the existence of these body parts made no sense. His shock slowly gave way to disbelief, and then turned into excitement so intense that he could barely contain it. He quickly summoned the recorded items into the room. A faint shimmer of light spread around him, and in an instant large objects appeared before his eyes. 2 legs, 2 hands, each larger than his height, and a heart that looked like a large metal engine, all preserved inside transparent ice containers. Ash stood still, speechless for a moment. The faint pulse of energy inside the Titan's heart was so strong that it made the air tremble. Even frozen, it felt alive. "It's real," he whispered. His gaze lingered on the frozen containers. The heart glowed faintly with an inner light, giving off the feeling that it could start beating again at any moment. For a while, Ash simply stared, overwhelmed by what he was seeing. A slow smile crept across his face as he whispered, half in awe and half in disbelief, "I actually stole something that could shake the entire world." Just then, roar! The whole place shook as the roars echoed one after another. All the caged monsters, beasts, and demons alike began to thrash inside their cages, their eyes burning with greed and hunger as they looked toward the Titan's body parts. The air itself trembled from the power in their cries. Ash was stunned for a second, his body freezing in place because of how sudden and intense it all was. He immediately stored the body parts back, and as soon as he did, the roaring began to lessen. But even then, every beast in the room was now staring directly at him. their eyes still filled with that same hunger and wild desire. Do these bastards think I am some kind of food to them? Ash frowned in dissatisfaction. His mood soured instantly. Without hesitation, he released the aura of his primordial core, letting it spread throughout the entire area. The moment his aura surged out, a heavy pressure filled the air, like an invisible weight pressing down from every direction. The roaring stopped. Every single monster shuddered, their bodies shaking violently as if a cold hand had gripped their very souls. The beasts who had been clawing at their cages just moments ago now crouched low, their heads bowed in fear. The entire area fell into silence, leaving only the faint sound of breathing and rattling chains. Humph! Ash let out a sharp snort and vanished from his spot, reappearing in another section where he wouldn't be disturbed again. I only came to get diluted Titan blood so that I could somehow increase my body's strength using that, Ash muttered, running a hand through his hair as his thoughts began to spiral. But now that I have the actual body parts, there's a lot that can be done. His voice trailed off as his mind drifted deep in thought. He wasn't exaggerating. The potential of Titan material was immeasurable. From forging divine weapons to body reinforcement or even experimenting with hybrid enhancements, the possibilities were endless. But looking at how the black market has the heart, legs, and hands, who knows, they might even have other body parts too. His eyes narrowed slightly. The black market's influence ran far deeper than he had expected. For them to possess something like this, they must have uncovered a secret beyond normal comprehension. Maybe they stumbled upon some kind of ancient inheritance, and all these treasures came from that site. That thought made sense. It would explain the sudden rise in their wealth and resources, as well as the absurdly rare items in their possession. Who knew what else they had hidden? Calming his heart, Ash took a slow breath and turned his focus back to the book of records floating before him. The next section contained formations, and just like before, the list was long and detailed. Each entry carried a certain ancient weight to it. There were ancient paradox formations, anti-teleportation formations, mana-sealing formations, mana-gathering formations, and countless others, each crafted for specific situations. The more Ash read, the more impressed he became by how vast the collection was. Even the materials and resources listed alongside, formation inks, engraving tools, and elemental stones, were all of top quality. This alone could be the foundation for creating an entire formation guild. But then, something unusual caught his eye. Yin and Yang array plate, unknown. C rank, X1. Ash's gaze froze. His breath hitched slightly as he reached out and materialized the array plate from the record. A circular metallic plate appeared before him, smooth to the touch and engraved with countless runic lines. At its center, a Tai Chi symbol rotated slowly, emitting a soft black and white glow that seemed to shift and merge continuously. The longer he stared at it, the more it felt alive. Yin and Yang energies swirled within, constantly balancing and clashing at the same time. How could this be?